Chapter 1. The Man Who Refused to Leave. The forest never slept. Breathe. Elias felt it every morning when the pale twin suns rose through the canopy, their light refracted into ribbons of blue and gold by leaves that weren't leaves at all, but thin crystalline membranes humming softly as they drank radiation. The sound was constant, low, rhythmic, almost mechanical, like the distant engines of a starship forever passing overhead. He woke beside the ruins of what had once been a colonial shelter, its alloy walls cracked open by years of creeping roots and stubborn moss. Elias stretched, joints aching, and reached for the knife he'd reforged from a shuttle strut long ago. The blade was ugly, defective, human. Still here, he muttered to no one. Years ago he'd stopped counting the days. The evacuation sirens had screamed once, static-riddled, panicked, then nothing. No ships, no rescue drones. Just silence and a sky that sometimes glowed with distant orbital traffic that never descended. Elias survived anyway. He scavenged, repaired, adapted. Where the colony's machines failed, he coaxed them back to life with wire stripped from sensor arrays and power cells cracked open by hand. Where alien predators prowled at night, six-limbed things with glassy eyes and heat hunger, he learned their patterns, marked the trees with subtle scratches, and avoided unnecessary fights. Humans weren't the strongest species in the galaxy. They just refused to quit. He knelt by a fire pit, feeding it resin that burned green and smelled faintly of citrus and iron. Above him something moved. Elias froze. Not fear. Calculation. The branches shifted high in the canopy, too controlled for wind. He slowly turned his head, eyes scanning shadows where bioluminescent vines cast ghostly light. Nothing revealed itself. Whatever it was, it knew how to hide. "Yeah," he said quietly, stirring the fire. "I hear you too." Some nights, he talked aloud just to hear a voice. Other nights, it felt like someone was listening. Far above, hidden among the leaves, amber eyes narrowed. The watcher crouched soundlessly on a living branch, her tail wrapped tight against her leg, fur patterned to match bark and glow moss. Her breath fogged faintly as she watched the human below. He moved wrong, too loud, too exposed, but he was still alive, still thinking, still building. He should have broken years ago. Her translator implant whispered cultural notes, probabilities, threat assessments. None of them explained why he repaired a broken solar array instead of abandoning it, or why he spoke gently to the small herbivore he freed from a snare not meant for it. "Subject displays anomalous persistence," she murmured, ears twitching. Below, Elias finished his meal and stared up at the stars breaking through the canopy, ships sliding between them like silent gods. "They forgot me," he said softly. "But I didn't forget how to survive." The foxwoman did not respond. She only watched. And for the first time since the evacuation, Elias was not as alone as he believed. Chapter 2. Eyes in the Canopy. She had been trained to observe, not to wonder. The foxwoman, designated Kael'thera of the Veari clans, balanced effortlessly on a living branch high above the forest floor, the bark flexing beneath her weight like muscle beneath skin. Her armor was a second hide, adaptive plates drinking in the forest's colors, masking heat, scent, sound. Below her, the human moved again, humming off-key as he dismantled a broken sensor tower with tools that were never meant to work together. Her visor scrolled data in soft violet glyphs. Subject, human male. Status, abandoned. Expected lifespan, 0.7 standard cycles. Actual survival, 6.3 cycles and increasing. Impossible. The Veari did not survive alone. No species truly did. Not without networks, caste support, communal logic. Yet the human repaired instead of replacing, hoarded broken things and made them useful. He spoke to machines as if they were stubborn animals, tapping their casings, coaxing sparks back into order. "Come on, don't die on me now," he muttered, tightening a wire with his teeth. Calethera's ears twitched. He assigned value where her people assigned efficiency. Machine failed. You recycled it. Tool broke. You requested another. Waste was logical. Attachment was weakness. Yet, the forest shifted. Her threat sense flared just as the predator did. A night hunter emerging soundlessly from between the glow vines. 6 legs. Razor mandibles. Its hide shimmered as it bent light around itself, closing the distance in heartbeats. The human didn't see it. Calethera swore softly in her native tongue. Protocol screamed observe only. The human was classified non-essential. Intervention would require justification, reports, possible sanction. She watched his back, broad, scarred, unaware, as the creature lunged. She moved. Controlled drop. Twist. Her plasma blade hissed into existence mid-fall, the air filling with a sharp scent of ionized sap. She struck once, precise, surgical. The predator collapsed without a sound, dissolving into steaming fragments that sank into the forest floor. Elias spun, knife raised. What the? She was already gone. Only scorched earth and the fading smell of ozone remained. Elias stood frozen, breath loud in his ears. He circled the clearing, eyes scanning shadows that no longer felt empty. "I didn't imagine that," he said finally. His voice was steady, but his hand shook as he lowered the blade. Above him, Calethera crouched again, heart racing in a way training had never prepared her for. She had saved him without thinking. Worse, she had wanted to. Her implant chimed softly. Unauthorized intervention logged. She ignored it. The human knelt by the scorched ground, touching it with bare fingers, brow furrowed, not in fear but curiosity. Instead of fleeing, he reinforced his perimeter, repositioned lights, adjusted angles. Adaptation. Immediate. Instinctive. "Someone's out there," he said to the trees, not accusing. Inviting. "If you didn't want me dead, thanks." Calethera felt something unfamiliar tighten in her chest. Humans, she realized, didn't survive because they were strong. They survived because even when the universe tried to erase them, they looked back and said, "I'm still here." Chapter 3. First contact is never gentle. The sky screamed. Elias looked up just as the clouds tore open in a spiral of fire and static. A ship, no, multiple ships, punched through the upper atmosphere, their hulls glowing white-hot as stabilizers fought gravity. The familiar forest hum was drowned out by a deeper sound, engines like thunder trapped in metal lungs. "Well," Elias muttered, squinting against the glare. "About damn time." The first impact hit 2 kilometers east. The ground shuddered, trees bowing as a shockwave rippled through the bioluminescent canopy. Birds, if they were birds, burst into the air in clouds of neon wings. Elias was already moving, grabbing his pack, slinging his knife across his back. Whatever had fallen out of the sky didn't do so gently. He never saw the drone until it fired. A pulse of blue light slammed into the ground at his feet, hurling him backward. He hit dirt hard, breath tearing from his lungs as the world rang. Above him hovered a machine, all sharp angles and glowing sigils, weapons humming as they charged again. "Hostile target acquired," a voice intoned, flat, alien, certain. Elias rolled just as the second shot scorched the air where his head had been. He came up behind a tree, heart hammering, brain racing. Drones didn't miss unless something interfered. Something did. A blur dropped from the canopy, striking the drone mid-air. Metal shrieked as plasma cut through its core. The machine fell in smoking pieces. She landed between Elias and the treeline. Up close, the foxwoman was unmistakably not human. Digitigrade legs, fur patterned like fire through leaves, eyes glowing amber even in daylight. Her armor shimmered, alive with shifting colors, and the blade in her hand sang softly as it powered down. Elias stared. He stared back. "Do not run," she said, voice filtered but clear. "They will shoot you if you do." "Good to know," Elias replied hoarsely. "You usually introduce yourself before saving someone?" Her ears flicked, an involuntary tell. Before she could answer, the forest filled with motion. Armored figures emerged from the undergrowth, weapons raised, visors glowing with threat readiness. Above, a wounded patrol craft hovered low, hull torn open, engines whining like injured animals. "Assets secured," one of them said, gaze locking onto Elias. "Human anomaly confirmed." Hands grabbed Elias's arms. He didn't fight, not because he couldn't, but because he knew when resistance wasted energy. Humans learned that early. As they dragged him toward a clearing scorched by the crash, he looked back at her. "You've been watching me," he said quietly. Not a question. "Yes," she answered after a fraction too long. The clearing opened into impossible light. Anti-grav stretchers, holographic displays, alien soldiers barking orders in layered languages. Elias felt the pull of a gravity field snap around him as they lifted him onto a transport platform. The foxwoman stepped closer, voice low. "Your survival was unexpected." Elias laughed once, short and humorless, as the platform rose and the forest fell away beneath him. "Yeah," he said. "That's what people keep telling me." Above them, the ship's bay doors closed with a sound like a verdict. And for the first time since the evacuation, Elias left the forest. Not as a ghost, but as a problem the galaxy hadn't planned for. Chapter 4. Among Stars That Don't Believe in Him. The space station smelled wrong. Elias noticed it immediately. Not bad, not good, just sterile, layered with sharp ozone, recycled air, and something faintly sweet that reminded him of antiseptic mixed with alien spice. The deck plates thrummed beneath his boots as he was escorted down a corridor of polished alloy and shifting light. Gravity here was precise, artificial, too perfect. Every step felt measured, expected. He hated it. Walls flickered with holographic symbols that rearranged themselves as alien eyes passed. The ceilings were too high, the corridors too clean. No vines, no scars, no evidence anyone had ever struggled to survive here. "Walk," a guard clicked, antennae flaring. "I am," Elias said, but he complied anyway. Kael'thera walked a half-step behind him, armor dimmed, ears lowered. Not submissive but wary. The way her tail barely moved told him more than her silence did. Back in the forest, she had been a shadow. Here she was exposed. They entered a transit ring, and suddenly Elias's stomach lurched as gravity vanished. His feet lifted from the deck. The guards adjusted effortlessly, stabilizers humming softly. Elias flailed once, then forced himself still, spreading his arms, exhaling slow. "Oh," he muttered. "This again." He twisted, using the handholds without instruction, orienting himself with the practiced ease of someone who'd grown up on half-broken colony stations. The guards paused, watching. "Human adapts quickly," one murmured. "Had to," Elias replied. "Falling hurts." They emerged into a vast internal concourse, a city folded inside metal. Neon-lit structures curved upward in impossible geometries. Alien merchants floated behind stalls anchored by grav fields, selling things that glowed, pulsed, or whispered softly in scents Elias couldn't name. Languages layered over one another like music without rhythm. He stared despite himself. Caelthera leaned closer. "Do not speak unless addressed." "Trust me," Elias said quietly, eyes tracking a creature with translucent skin and a visible beating heart. "That goes both ways." They brought him before a circular chamber, its center dominated by a hologram of the planet below. His forest reduced to data. Figures stood around it. Tall, scaled, luminous, mechanical. Power wore many shapes here. "You survived 6 cycles alone," one voice said, resonant and cold. "Explain." Elias crossed his arms. "I ate," he said. "I fixed things. I learned what wanted to kill me and stayed out of its way. That is insufficient. Worked anyway." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Confusion, irritation. Systems alarms suddenly flared red. "Engine coupling destabilizing," an AI announced. "Cascade failure imminent." The station shuddered. Lights flickered. Aliens froze, waiting for protocol. Elias didn't. "Your power grid's looping feedback," he said, already moving. "You've isolated the failure so hard it's cooking itself. No authorization." He yanked open a panel, sparks snapping against his gloves. The hum of engines deepened, uneven, angry. Elias rerouted cables, bypassed safeties, tied systems together that had no business touching. The station steadied. Silence followed. Caelthera stared at him, amber eyes wide. Elias wiped his hands on his pants. "You don't survive alone by following the manual." Around them the stars burned on, quiet witnesses, as the station's leaders finally looked at the human not as an anomaly, but as a variable they could no longer ignore. Chapter 5: The One Who Was Never Alone. The forest welcomed him back with light. As Elias stepped off the descending transport platform, bioluminescent leaves flared softly in recognition, casting waves of blue and gold across the clearing. The air smelled alive again. Resin, damp soil, alien flowers that opened only at dusk. Above the canopy, starships hovered in respectful silence, their engines reduced to a distant, almost reverent hum. He hadn't expected that. Behind him, the platform sealed with a hiss, leaving only Elias and Caelthera standing at the forest's edge. Her armor was gone now, replaced by lighter travel gear. Without the adaptive plates she looked smaller, but somehow more real. "They will not follow you here," she said. "The Council has declared this region protected." Elias snorted softly. Took them long enough to notice it existed. She watched him walk forward, fingers brushing the bark of a familiar tree, the same way he always did, checking tension, texture, listening. Not nostalgia. Assessment. The forest hadn't changed. He had. "They offered you passage," Caelthera said carefully. "Return to human space. Restoration. Recognition." Elias crouched, lifting a stone he'd shaped years ago into a marker, setting it back into place. "I know. And you refused." He stood meeting her eyes. "I didn't refuse everything." For a moment, only the forest spoke, the hum, the rustle, the distant cry of something large and cautious. Caelthera's ears tilted back, a subtle sign of uncertainty. Among her people, bonds were efficient, measured. What she felt now had no word in her language. "You were never meant to stay," she said. Elias smiled, not wide, not bitter, just honest. "Neither was I." She stepped closer, tail brushing the ground. I watched you for years. I told myself it was duty. Observation. Her voice lowered. But when they ordered me to leave you, I could not. Elias didn't answer right away. He looked up through the canopy, where a Veari cruiser glided past the stars like a silent guardian. You know, he said finally, I thought being forgotten was the worst thing that could happen to a person. She waited. But being seen, he continued, and still choosing to stay, that's different. He turned to her, extending a hand. Not commanding, not pleading. An offer. A very human thing. I'm not going back to be studied, he said. And I'm not staying alone. Calethera stared at his hand. Her implant chimed softly. Cultural violation, emotional risk, permanent consequences. She silenced it. She placed her hand in his. Above them, the ships adjusted formation. Not in defense, but acknowledgement. Data streams updated. Classifications rewritten. Not anomaly. Not subject. Human liaison. The forest lights pulsed brighter, responding to unfamiliar harmony. Elias felt it then. Not solitude, not survival, but something steadier. Something earned. For the first time since the evacuation, the universe hadn't just noticed him. It had chosen to stay. And this time, he wasn't alone. The starship drifted at the edge of the system, engines humming at idle. No longer a weapon, no longer a threat, just a promise held together by metal and hope. Beyond the viewport, alien constellations burned in unfamiliar patterns, their lights scattering across the glass like memories that refused to fade. Below them, the forest world turned slowly, its bioluminescent veins visible even from orbit, alive and watching. Elias stood barefoot on the observation deck, feeling the faint pulse of artificial gravity through the soles of his feet. It reminded him of roots, of ground that pushed back when you leaned on it. Calethera joined him, her reflection overlapping his in the glass, fur catching the starlight, eyes softer now, unarmored in a way no battlefield had ever demanded. Behind them, the station's council chambers were silent. No orders, no classifications. The galaxy had made its choice. They rewrote the accords, she said quietly. Independent human settlement. Protected status. Shared governance. Elias exhaled, slow. All that trouble. Just because I didn't know when to give up. She angled her head, a Veari gesture he'd learned meant understanding. No. Because you refused to disappear. Outside, ships adjusted formation. Not in command, but in acknowledgement. The forest below pulsed brighter, responding to orbital beacons Elias himself had helped design. Human ingenuity stitched gently into alien perfection. Calethera took his hand. This time there were no warnings, no implants chiming in protest. I watched you survive when logic said you shouldn't, she said. You taught the galaxy something it forgot. He squeezed her fingers, grounding himself in the warmth. We don't endure because we're stronger, he said. We endure because we remember each other. They stood there as the ship turned toward the stars, not leaving home, not conquering anything, just choosing a future. And somewhere between the hum of engines and the quiet breathing of the forest world below, the universe learned what it meant when a human decided to stay.